Welcome to listening to stories on Kevin Tao's TV audiobook channel, Chapter 2343, Bara's Challenge. That Saruk? He's much slyer than I expected. He makes himself look like an idiot, but he's actually scheming behind our backs, Bara muttered. He then focused on Yuan and spoke, "Instead of working for Saruk, why don't you work for me instead? I don't know what Saruk promised you, but I can promise you this world and unlimited authority. I will make you its supreme ruler, second to none and above every living being to walk this earth." That is a tempting offer, considering that Saruk didn't really promise me anything except some of his powers. Bara laughed at such words and continued, "In that case, you should definitely ditch that idiot and come work for me. In fact, it's only a matter of time before we conquer this world, not with force like Zaron, but strategy and faith." "Is that why you've been forming an alliance with everyone?" Yuan already knew their plans, but still asked anyway. "Indeed. This plan started long before Zaron's interference. Although it was a risky move, I made his puppet kill someone from the 3 pillars of heaven, forcing Zaron's hands." Yuan's eyebrows twitched slightly after hearing this revelation. "Is that why Kulas went on a rampage even though I was near him at that time? So it was this bastard's doing. What would you have done if I never intervened?" Yuan suddenly asked. "I have my own ways," said Bara with a mysterious smirk on its face. "What about the Enlightened One, then? If I'm going to be second to none, that must include him, you know." "Ha ha ha, there's no problem at all. He might be a little angry, but there's nothing he can do about it. So you're just going to discard him like this?" Yuan sneered. "How am I supposed to work with someone who doesn't hesitate to throw away their own pawn? I am not going to discard him. He's still useful, and there are other things he can do for me. If you're worried that I might do the same to you, then you don't have to worry, since you are countless times better than that kid. However, you still have to prove yourself." Yuan pondered for a moment before nodding. "All right, I'll work with you for now. What do you want me to do?" "I want you to surpass the Enlightened One's authority within the 3 pillars of heaven." "Surpass him?" "That is not going to be simple," Yuan muttered. Bara laughed. "I never said it would be easy. Did you really think I'd just hand everything to you? If you want his position, you'll have to take it yourself." He continued calmly. "That said, without a handicap, it would be impossible for you. He's amassed immense influence and faith over the years, while you're nothing more than a stranger who appeared out of nowhere. 10,000 years. I will make it so that the Enlightened One cannot interfere with you for 10,000 years. So try your best to defeat him in that time." "So he'll also be aware of our little competition?" Yuan asked. "Of course." "Very well. I accept the challenge. See you again in 10,000 years, if you're still alive by then." In the next moment, Yuan found himself back in the celestial chamber with the Enlightened One. "What did you speak to my God about?" The Enlightened One immediately questioned. "You should ask him yourself. What are you?" The Enlightened One suddenly halted his speech and stood there in silence, almost as if he was in a daze. "So that's how it looks when I am speaking with an eternal." Yuan thought to himself, as this was his first time seeing someone in a conversation with one. Moments later, the Enlightened One started to move again. "So you dare covet my position?" he growled, his voice low and feral like a threatened beast. "It wasn't my idea, but your gods, you know? I don't care. I will never hand my position over to someone like you." The Enlightened One roared as he suddenly lunged at Yuan. Yuan stepped aside casually, causing the Enlightened One to stumble and crash to the ground. Yuan narrowed his eyes at him. During the fall, the Enlightened One's veil and hood had slipped away, revealing his face, Celestial Emperor. Yuan instantly recognized his handsome face. The Enlightened One turned out to be the first Celestial Emperor. However, Yuan wasn't surprised in the slightest, as if he already suspected this when he couldn't sense any cultivation from the Enlightened One. "I was wondering why I couldn't sense your cultivation to think you're just a mere mortal." Yuan spoke with a cold smile. The Enlightened One's expression paled. "What nonsense are you spouting? I'm merely concealing my cultivation," he shouted, panic seeping into his voice as he desperately tried to hide the truth. Unfortunately for him, his lies held no weight with Yuan, who already knew the truth. Yuan suddenly reached for his neck and dragged him off the ground and into the air. I was given 10,000 years to replace you. At first I thought it would be pretty difficult, but now, I don't even need a day, as I can simply replace you by killing you, he spoke in a cold voice. You wouldn't dare. If you kill me, the 3 pillars of heaven and half of the world will turn into your enemy. At that point you will no longer be able to rule the world. Yuan fell silent for a moment before releasing him. Don't worry, it would be far too easy and boring to simply kill you, he said in a grim voice. I want you to watch as I slowly usurp your authority and replace you. The Enlightened One glared at Yuan with teary eyes as he lay on the ground, yet there was nothing he could do, as Bahra had forbidden him from interfering with Yuan for the next 10,000 years. Chapter 2344, Becoming Heaven's Envoy. You, I forbid it, the Enlightened One bit his lips to resist his fear and shouted at Yuan. This position belongs to me. I worked non-stop for over 100,000 years to reach my current status. Who the hell are you to just appear and try to take it away from me? You don't deserve it. Yuan chuckled and replied, You think you deserve this position? If it weren't for the Eternal, you wouldn't even be alive right now, you idiot. And all you do is order people around and relay the Eternal's message, pretending to be Heaven's envoy. If you think about it, you've really done nothing deserving of your position, hence why your master wants me, someone more competent and useful, to replace you. The Enlightened One's face drained of color. Even though Yuan had yet to begin usurping his position, the mere weight of his presence was enough to make him feel threatened. Worse still, Yuan had Bahra's backing, while he himself was forbidden to act, forced to stand by and watch as Yuan slowly replaced him. Be a good little boy and stay here. I have a lot to do. Yuan turned around and began making his way toward the exit. Seeing this, the Enlightened One rushed to block the door with his own body, arms spread and everything. How cute. Yuan chuckled before walking around him. There's nothing you can do to stop me. So just sit back and enjoy whatever time you have left in that position. The Enlightened One trembled. No, I haven't even achieved my dream of being the supreme ruler of this world yet. There's no way I will let you take it from me. The Enlightened One then spoke with a determined look on his face. I may not be able to directly interfere with you, but it's not like there's nothing I can do. Meanwhile, Patriarch's son returned to the Celestial Hall after dealing with his business. What the... He's gone? He was dumbfounded to find Yuan missing from the Celestial Hall. Did he leave, or did he enter the Celestial Chamber to meet with the Enlightened One? Patriarch's son pondered for a moment before abandoning his latter thought, as there was no way the Enlightened One would invite someone to his chamber. After all, even I have not been inside the Celestial Chamber. Patriarch's son shook his head. Just as he was about to turn around and leave in search of Yuan, the double doors swung open, and 2 figures emerged from the light. Patriarch's son's eyes widened in disbelief as Yuan's face came into clear view, yet his shock did not end there. The Enlightened One stood right behind him, his veil and hood gone, his face fully exposed. Your Majesty! Despite his shock, Patriarch's son subconsciously greeted the Enlightened One. Yuan raised an eyebrow at the way Patriarch's son addressed the Enlightened One, as if he were already the Celestial Emperor. Your Majesty, Yuan looked at the Enlightened One and poked fun at him. Even though you have not unified the world yet? Shut up! Patriarch's son lifted his head to stare at them with a bewildered expression. Tian Yang? You? Yuan quickly realized why Patriarch's son was staring at him in disbelief and smiled. Don't worry, we've become best friends. Yuan suddenly wrapped his arm around the Enlightened One's shoulders as if they were best buddies. Get your filthy hands off me, you crazy bastard. The Enlightened One swiftly pushed Yuan's arm away. Tian Yang, what have you done? Patriarch's son exclaimed in anger, Touching His Majesty is forbidden and punishable by death. Oh? Are you going to execute me for touching you? Your Majesty? Yuan asked the Enlightened One with a cold smile. Go ahead and execute me. I'll kill you before that happens. Yuan suddenly spoke, using voice transmission, causing the Enlightened One to tremble in fear. Your Majesty, Patriarch's son glared at him. After a moment of silence, the Enlightened One spoke. It's fine. What? Patriarch's son almost couldn't believe his ears. What did I say? We're best friends, Yuan chuckled. After all, I have also become Heaven's envoy after speaking with Heaven itself. What? The Enlightened One and Patriarch's son exclaimed, This sly bastard. I didn't think he'd use me to turn himself into Heaven's envoy, the Enlightened One cried inwardly after realizing his mistake. Why are you so surprised? Yuan asked the Enlightened One. We just finished speaking with Heaven. Or are you saying that I am lying? The Enlightened One gritted his teeth. If he were to invalidate Yuan's claim, he'd be interfering with Yuan and denying Heaven's will. In other words, defying Bara's orders. It's true, he spoke in a trembling voice. He has spoken with Heaven and received its approval. Patriarch's son was speechless. Yuan couldn't help but laugh inwardly. Oh, Celestial Emperor, you are too young and naive right now, making it incredibly easy to manipulate you. Having spent most of his time in isolation within the celestial chamber and rarely interacting with others, the Enlightened One lacked real experience. Moreover, a lifetime of absolute authority had left him surrounded by a fragile wall of perceived safety. Yet that same fragility meant that once someone shattered that illusion and stepped into his personal domain as a threat, he had no idea how to respond and would panic easily. Furthermore, Yuan had already instilled fear in the Enlightened One with a genuine threat of death, making it even harder for him to think clearly. Yuan took advantage of this situation and spoke again. Not only have I received Heaven's approval, but I have also received many divinations from Heaven that will allow me to unify the world within 10,000 years. What? That's impossible, the Enlightened One exclaimed. Yuan looked at him with a puzzled face and said, Didn't Heaven tell you? I guess Heaven is really disappointed by your underwhelming performance, hence why it asked me to take charge. You? The Enlightened One gritted his teeth and trembled in anger, but his mind was in too much of a mess to think of a proper response. Chapter 2345, Becoming Heaven's Envoy 2. Patriarch's son watched Yuan and the Enlightened One with a gawking expressing, as he'd never seen anyone speaking and treating the Enlightened One like an equal. In fact, Yuan even appeared superior in Patriarch's son's eyes. There was just something about him that made the Enlightened One's presence feel weaker than usual. Patriarch? Yuan suddenly called out to him. Yes, Patriarch's son hastily responded after snapping out of his daze. Your Majesty? He added after a brief pause. Your Majesty? Yuan frowned. Do I look like an emperor to you? Just continue calling me like before. As you wish, Senior Tian. Even though Yuan had just announced his position as Heaven's envoy, his presence and confidence were so overwhelming that Patriarch's son subconsciously treated him as if he were the Enlightened One. Anyway, I want you to summon everyone in the family, so I can officially announce my presence to the entire family. I will have everyone assemble at the Heavenly Assembly as soon as possible. Patriarch's son acknowledged. You may leave now, said Yuan. Yes. Patriarch's son didn't linger to ask any more questions and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Once they were alone again, the Enlightened One cursed at Yuan. How dare you use me as a stepping stone, you damn bastard? Yuan shrugged. If you don't want me to use you as a stepping stone, you're free to surrender your position to me. I can even promise to let you live in peace for the rest of your life. You expect me to surrender to a nobody like you? In your dreams? The Enlightened One roared, a ferocious flame burning in his eyes. Even if I cannot interfere with you directly, I can still continue to expand my influence. I will make sure you never defeat me, no matter how hard you try and prove my worth to God. Yuan abruptly placed a hand on the Enlightened One's head and proceeded to rub it fiercely, messing with his hair like an elder brother bullying a younger sibling. Good luck with that. He laughed out loud as he left the celestial hall, leaving the Enlightened One trembling in anger. Seriously, where in God's name did such a bastard come from? The Enlightened One clenched his fists and gritted his teeth at Yuan's very existence, feeling emotions he never knew existed before, mostly anger. After leaving, Patriarch Sun summoned every member of the three families to the heavenly assembly using the summoning bell, an instrument reserved only for emergencies. The bell's toll echoed across the holy continent, sending shock through everyone who heard it. This sound, it's heaven's bell. Who the hell rang it? It wasn't used even during our war with the giant race. Yet it's being used now. What in heaven's name happened? Everyone, stop whatever you're doing and head to the heavenly assembly. In just a few hours, tens of thousands of people from the three pillars of heaven gathered at the heavenly assembly. Whether it was a mere servant or a high-ranking elder, everyone had to be there with no exception. Patriarch's son, were you responsible for ringing the heavenly bell? A beautiful middle-aged woman questioned him. Indeed, I rang the heavenly bell. You'd better have a good explanation for this, Patriarch's son. Another voice resounded. Calm down, Patriarch G. Everything will be explained in a moment. However, I will not be the one speaking. Wait a second. The middle-aged woman who questioned him earlier realized something and asked, Is this related to His Majesty the Enlightened One? The entire atmosphere changed upon hearing the Enlightened One's name. Patriarch's son responded with only a silent nod. Now that they knew the Enlightened One was involved, nobody there dared ask any more questions. Sometime later, a figure appeared on the platform beside Patriarch's son. Who the hell is that, and why is he standing there? Among the thousands of people there, only a few recognized Yuan's face, so the majority were puzzled by his random appearance. Hello, everyone. My name is Tian Yang, and I was the one who called for you. Yuan wasted no time and immediately introduced himself. However, before he could say another word, someone shouted, Tian Yang? Who the fuck is that? Get out of there. His Majesty, the Enlightened One, will be here soon. Many more voices followed right after, all of them cursing at Tian Yang. Seeing this, Patriarch's son, without a word, unleashed his cultivation base and attacked those who had just spoken, instantly killing them on the spot. Patriarch's son! The family heads and elders exclaimed in shock after witnessing his sudden and brutal response, especially since the first victim to speak was actually a high-ranking elder. What is the meaning of this? Why did you kill Elder Wu? Patriarch G demanded an answer. As Elder Wu was from his G family, those who dare to interrupt and disrespect Heaven's envoy will be executed on the spot. Patriarch's son declared, What? Everyone there exclaimed in shock. But the Enlightened One isn't even present, and they were talking to. They looked at Yuan, who stood calmly before them, faces puzzled. Let me finish, Yuan said before continuing. I have spoken to heaven and been accepted as its second heaven's envoy. Silence rippled throughout the crowd after his declaration as a second heaven's envoy. Someone suddenly raised his hand. Yuan pointed at him and asked, What is it? I am the patriarch of the Tian family, Tian Liaming. I would like to ask you, how did this happen? And do you have evidence? Even if I want to believe you, it's simply too sudden and hard to believe, especially since this is the first time many of us have even heard of you. A good question. Allow me to explain everything from the beginning, said Yuan. Initially, I came here to check up on Sunrushi, my partner. However, I was also curious about the Enlightened One, so I asked him to meet with me. Sunrushi, your partner. The crowd was already in shock, and Yuan was only just beginning.